My family is in the worst mess. Brooke doesn't talk to us. She's had
Linda Hogan has revealed that she and Hulk have been completely cut off by their daughter Brooke, just months after Brooke accused them of mental and physical abuse. Now the case has reached court, and Brooke's testimony is exposing how serious the damage really is, with some of it directly tied to the events surrounding Hulk Hogan's death. Brooke's shocking statements have broken years of silence within the family. In the world of professional wrestling, few families were as publicly respected as the Hogans. For decades, they appeared to live the American dream, a legendary wrestler, his glamorous wife, and their two talented children enjoying a perfect life in the spotlight. But on March 27, 2025, that perfect image came crashing down in the most heartbreaking way. Brooke Hogan, now 36 and a mother of newborn twins, made the brave decision to break the silence and reveal the hidden truth about her family that had been kept secret for nearly 30 years. She explained her reasons for cutting ties with her parents, describing a lifetime filled with intense verbal and emotional abuse that at times turned physical. This wasn't a sudden reaction, a cry for attention, or just another celebrity scandal made to attract headlines and online talk. It was a thoughtful and serious public statement from someone who had lived through years of pain and had finally gathered the courage to speak her truth about a man the world had admired for so long. The strength and seriousness of Brooke's words come not just from how shocking they are, but from the detailed and careful way she shared her story. These weren't unclear accusations or emotional outbursts like those often seen in celebrity conflicts. Brooke described cruel, hurtful messages and harsh public fights filled with damaging words that broke down her confidence and sense of self-worth. Her calm and steady tone reflects someone who had spent years dealing with trauma, seeking help, noticing repeated patterns of abuse, and finally realizing she needed to speak up to protect her own mental health. Her claims were further supported by an unexpected witness who had closely observed the Hogan family's problems. Bubba the Love Sponge Clem, despite his own rocky history with them, confirmed the abuse during his divorce testimony, describing a home where violence toward Brooke wasn't rare, but something many people had seen happen more than once.
To call Brooke fat and the C word, slap her across the face probably 4 or 5 times, kick her in the legs, just belittle her, pull her hair. Well, what caused all this? Nothing. What do you mean? Well, Brooke didn't seem to do anything. Brooke didn't spill her glass of Coca-Cola at the table during dinner. She wasn't talking back and being disrespectful. She was just being a kid, and that got her ass beat uncomfortably more.
This testimony is especially serious because it describes abuse that appeared to happen without reason, showing a pattern of violence that had nothing to do with Brooke's actions and everything to do with her mother's mental state and harmful behavior. To truly understand the weight of these claims, we have to consider who Brooke Hogan was supposed to be in the public eye and how different her real life was from the perfect image shown to the world. She was the beloved daughter featured on the VH1 reality show Hogan Knows Best, which aired from 2005 to 2007 and presented what seemed like a loving, though sometimes strict, family where a caring father tried to manage his daughter's growing independence while maintaining strong family values that many viewers looked up to. Fans of the show saw teenage Brooke dealing with typical issues, dating, dreaming of a music career, and clashing with her parents while being supported by a family that appeared deeply invested in her well-being and future. Hulk Hogan was shown as the classic overprotective dad, concerned about her boyfriends and trying to shield her from the harsh side of fame, while Linda Hogan seemed like the calm, steady mother keeping things balanced between them. But according to Brooke's recent statements and supporting voices like Bubba Clem, the family life shown on TV was just a scripted version that hid the painful reality happening behind closed doors. What was promoted as a show about strong values and real love was actually, as former wrestling executive Eric Bischoff said on his 83 Weeks podcast, a major reason the Hogan marriage broke down faster by exposing personal problems to the public and making everything worse instead of helping. Brooke revealed she was often misled, taken advantage of, and used as a way for others to gain attention or profit from her pain and public humiliation. She also said she was pressured to defend bad actions in public, likely referring to moments like her father's racist rant, which she later felt tricked into excusing. One of the most painful and widely known incidents took place in 2015, when Hulk Hogan faced intense backlash after a 2007 sex tape transcript came out showing him using the N-word, and making openly racist remarks while discussing Brooke's love life. In the recording, he expressed anger over her dating a black man and used language that shocked the public and destroyed his image as a proud all-American hero. At the time, Brooke publicly supported her father through interviews and statements. That made his words seem like a one-time mistake rather than a reflection of his real character.
You wouldn't, or anybody else watching, nobody would want their lowest moment to be felt and aired for the world to see.
Now, with Brooke's recent revelations and the understanding that comes from years of personal healing and reflection, her earlier defense of her father appears in a completely different and deeply troubling light. But it also becomes clear that Hulk Hogan himself was dealing with serious personal struggles. Behind the public image of an American hero were many hidden sides of Hulk Hogan that the world never saw. While Brooke Hogan's claims of childhood abuse painted a painful picture that shocked fans worldwide, they are just one part of a much deeper and more complex story of private downfall that had been unfolding quietly for years. Terry Gene Bollea, the man behind the Hulk Hogan persona, carried many dark burdens and followed a self-destructive path that not only broke apart his family but also damaged his health, ruined his reputation, and slowly destroyed the legacy he had spent decades creating. One of the most devastating and deeply personal battles was his long-term addiction to prescription painkillers, a habit that started because of the serious physical injuries caused by years of wrestling. The man who once amazed millions with his power and larger-than-life presence was, behind the scenes, trapped in a painful cycle of constant physical agony and growing dependence on medication, which affected every part of his life, especially at home. In an older interview that has recently resurfaced and now feels even more disturbing, Hogan himself spoke openly about the endless pattern of pain and pills that took control of his daily life and clearly affected his ability to be a stable, emotionally available father during the years when his children needed him the most.
Was on the pain pills. I did have doctors just writing prescriptions after prescriptions, and all of a sudden it becomes this vicious cycle. As they were giving me the pain meds, I was in crazy pain. I couldn't even function. But as soon as things started to wind down, they would keep giving me the pain meds. It got to a point where when I had the 10th back surgery, the pharmacy would call me, your prescription's ready.
The continuation of his addiction story reveals a psychological dependence that had gone far beyond any genuine medical need, showing how deeply he had come to rely on painkillers not just to manage physical pain, but to cope with emotional stress, personal failures, and the slow breakdown of his public and private life.
And I would go like a dog chasing a bone, I'd go pick it up. And then finally I just looked at myself and I said, I'm not in pain. I don't need this. My body hurts from all the wrestling injuries, but I'm not in this excruciating pain. Then I can't live with it. I can live with this, the amount of pain.
Hogan's relationship with alcohol was equally destructive, long-lasting, and deeply concerning, adding another layer to his substance abuse that only worsened his already serious addiction to prescription drugs. During his wrestling years, he reportedly drank up to 12 beers after each match to deal with the physical pain and intense pressure of the job, a level of drinking that went far beyond occasional use or stress relief and clearly pointed to a serious problem that likely affected his ability to be a stable father, loyal husband, and positive role model during the most important stages of his children's development. The combination of heavy alcohol use, constant public attention, and the pressure of maintaining both a demanding career and a spotless public image created a situation where poor decisions, emotional outbursts, and damaging behavior became almost impossible to avoid and left lasting harm on his family. His drinking also contributed to health issues like bloating and frequent late-night junk food binges, which took a toll on his body. But the more serious damage was emotional. Long-term alcohol abuse likely disrupted his parenting, weakened his emotional control, and made it hard for him to form strong and healthy bonds within his family. The timeline of his alcohol use is especially important in the context of Brooke's claims about childhood abuse, as it wasn't until January 2023 that Hogan finally chose to quit drinking after attending a New Year's Eve party that made him reflect on his choices. This means that for the entire span of Brooke's childhood, teenage years, and early adulthood, the years when a child most needs safety, stability, and emotional guidance, her father was struggling with serious alcohol problems, which would have deeply affected his presence, decision-making, and ability to provide the secure home environment every child deserves. However, Hogan's damaging behavior didn't stop with substance use. It extended into actions and attitudes that caused even more harm to his family and tore apart the moral image he once had in the eyes of millions. The 2015 scandal that nearly destroyed his career and permanently damaged his legacy involved far more than private mistakes or momentary lapses in judgment. It exposed deeply troubling beliefs and character flaws that directly clashed with everything his public persona stood for. A leaked transcript from a 2007 sex tape captured him calmly using racist language, including the N-word, while discussing Brooke's dating life, saying he was uncomfortable with her being with a black man and even stating, "I am a racist." To a point, these were not words shouted in anger or twisted out of context. They were clear, deliberate expressions of prejudice that exposed the true mindset of a man who had spent decades presenting himself as a symbol of unity, strength, and American values. The impact of this racist conversation reached far beyond his public downfall, as it took place in 2007, when Brooke was 19 and likely dating or thinking about dating, making the betrayal feel even more personal and painful for her. Imagine being a young woman and discovering that your father didn't just disagree with your dating choices, but actually held deeply hateful and prejudiced views about an entire group of people. The emotional pain of realizing that your own parent believes in such harmful ideas would be overwhelming and could permanently damage the parent-child bond in ways that may never fully heal. The fallout from the scandal was swift, serious, and far-reaching. WWE immediately ended Hogan's contract and removed all references to him from their website, including his Hall of Fame profile. Major toy companies like Mattel stopped producing Hogan action figures, and large retailers such as Target, Toys R Us, and Walmart pulled all his merchandise from their stores. The backlash came from all directions: fellow wrestlers, fans, and civil rights groups, shattering the reputation he had built over decades and destroying the carefully crafted public image of a hero and role model. But the sex tape scandal didn't just reveal racism. It also exposed a disturbing part of Hogan's values and his ability to deeply betray those closest to him. In 2006, he had a sexual relationship with Heather Clem, the wife of his friend Bubba the Love Sponge Clem, and the entire encounter was secretly recorded. Although Hogan later said he didn't know he was being filmed, the core issue remained: he had an affair with his friend's wife, breaking trust, loyalty, and basic moral standards. This betrayal wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of dishonesty and personal failure that also affected his marriage to Linda Hogan. Linda accused him of having an affair with Christiane Plant, who was not just a random person but a close friend of their daughter Brooke, someone Brooke trusted and confided in. This betrayal was confirmed by Plant in a 2008 interview with the National Enquirer. The idea that Hogan would risk his daughter's emotional well-being by becoming involved with someone so close to her shows a shocking lack of concern for family boundaries and a clear pattern of selfish behavior. Linda's claims didn't stop with infidelity. She also accused him of physical and emotional abuse. In her 2011 memoir Wrestling the Hulk, My Life Against the Ropes, she described terrifying moments when he ripped her shirt, threw lamps, slammed doors, pinned her down by the throat, and punched walls, making her fear for her safety and her life. These accounts reveal a long-standing pattern of aggression, intimidation, and emotional harm that created a dangerous and unstable home environment. In a 2016 interview with Inside Edition, Linda said, "I was always afraid he would kill me in one of his rages," a chilling statement that offers insight into the fear and trauma she lived with throughout their marriage and highlights the disturbing environment in which Brooke and her brother Nick were raised. Even children who are not directly abused but grow up around domestic violence often carry long-lasting emotional scars. Adding to this already troubling history were the steroid allegations from the early 1990s, which exposed yet another side of Hogan's struggles and dishonesty. While he initially denied using steroids, famously claiming on a 1991 appearance on the Arsenio Hall show that his massive physique was the result of natural training, his statements were later proven false. A bit during Vince McMahon's 1994 steroid trial, Hogan admitted to using steroids and explained that their use was common among WWF wrestlers in the 1980s. While it's true that steroid use was widespread in professional wrestling at the time, Hogan's earlier public denials followed by later Admissions made under legal protection revealed a long-standing pattern of dishonesty meant to protect his carefully built image, a pattern that repeatedly showed up throughout his career. These revelations, combined with the damaging statements from Linda Hogan, marked the complete collapse of the Hogan family's public image. As if Brooke's heartbreaking accusations against her parents weren't already enough to forever change how the public saw one of America's most well-known wrestling families, it soon became clear that the dysfunction, emotional chaos, and toxic relationships within the Hogan household went even deeper than anyone had imagined. Linda Hogan, Hulk's ex-wife and Brooke's mother, came forward with explosive claims of her own, which not only painted a more disturbing and complete picture of Hulk Hogan's private behavior, but also revealed her own troubling actions toward their daughter, exposing a family dynamic that was broken on every level. The most shocking part of Linda's public response wasn't what she said about Hulk, though her comments were serious and damaging, but how she reacted to her daughter's desperate and painful decision to come forward about years of abuse. Instead of responding with maternal concern, empathy, or even curiosity about what could have led Brooke to make such serious allegations, Linda responded with coldness and cruelty, showing no sign of the protective instincts one might expect from a mother. Her reaction was immediate, harsh, and aimed not at understanding her daughter's pain but at attacking her character and mental state in a way that seemed carefully designed to discredit her. On March 28, 2005, just one day after Brooke's public statement, Linda posted on Facebook, calling Brooke a narcissist just like her father and denying the abuse, admitting only to spanking her once and calling her names. This response reflected the exact kind of dismissive, blame-shifting, and gaslighting behavior that many abuse survivors describe from their abusers. Rather than show any sign of personal accountability, compassion, or concern for her daughter's emotional well-being, Linda immediately labeled Brooke with a psychiatric term and minimized her own admitted actions, as if physical punishment and name-calling were harmless or standard parenting choices. What made it even worse was how Linda's attack continued in the days that followed, growing more calculated, more damaging, and more focused on questioning her own daughter's mental stability in a way that felt designed to break her down emotionally and destroy her credibility in the eyes of the public. She alleged that Brooke, while intoxicated, had broken her collarbone and cut her lip, insisting on going to the hospital due to suspected poisoning, an accusation that Linda firmly denied. These counterclaims appeared carefully constructed to present Brooke as unstable, violent, and struggling with substance abuse, suggesting her statements couldn't be trusted or taken seriously. The timing and nature of these accusations, made immediately after Brooke's own public disclosure of abuse, raised serious concerns about their truthfulness, intent, and Linda's emotional stability. But perhaps the most disturbing and telling part of Linda's response was her immediate threat of legal action against her own daughter. She stated, "I'm not going to defend myself against these ridiculous allegations. I'll do that in court if she keeps it up," a reaction that showed zero signs of motherly concern, emotional support, or any effort toward reconciliation or understanding. Instead of showing sadness, confusion, or even a basic desire to repair the relationship, Linda chose a combative, legalistic stance that mirrored the very toxic, adversarial family dynamic Brooke had described. A caring, emotionally healthy parent, when confronted with serious allegations from their adult child, might respond with a willingness to listen, acknowledge the pain, or at least reflect on the possibility of misunderstanding or emotional harm. They might suggest therapy, express regret, or try to rebuild trust. Linda's aggressive, dismissive, and defensive reaction only confirmed the kind of emotionally cold environment Brooke had been trying to escape, and explained why she felt the only way forward was to cut ties completely. However, the most explosive and damaging accusations Linda made weren't against Brooke, they were aimed directly at Hulk Hogan. In March 2025, Linda posted a series of emotional social media statements in which she called Hulk a complete liar and labeled him a sex addict. These weren't just random insults from a bitter ex-wife seeking attention. They were specific and consistent with years of legal filings, past interviews, and behavioral patterns already documented in the public eye. The term sex addict took on more meaning when seen alongside the stories Linda had shared in her 2011 memoir, Wrestling the Hulk: My Life Against the Ropes, where she described a marriage filled with infidelity, compulsive sexual behavior, and emotional pain that went far beyond the normal challenges of married life. Even though she hadn't used that exact phrase in the book, the repeated examples of cheating and harmful behavior painted a clear picture of someone trapped in a destructive pattern. Her claim that Hulk was a complete liar also fit with a long and well-known history of deception, from denying steroid use before admitting it under oath, to shifting stories about racist remarks, to dismissing and minimizing abuse accusations whenever they surfaced. Over and over again, when the truth threatened to damage his carefully crafted public identity, Hulk Hogan chose to lie. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Linda's new statements was how they reflected the deeper ongoing trauma in the Hogan family, trauma that had never been addressed, processed, or healed, and continued to hurt everyone involved. Linda said the family was in the worst condition it had ever been, even 15 years after their divorce, showing how unresolved emotional wounds had only grown over time. These confessions raised serious questions about how generational trauma festers when no one takes real steps toward healing. Despite her cold response to Brooke, Linda's overall message was laced with contradictions. She called Hulk a terrible husband while praising him for spending $3 million on Brooke's career and calling him a good father. These conflicting messages, loving and critical at once, supportive and accusatory, created an emotionally unstable picture of the household and mirrored the kind of mixed signals children often struggle with in dysfunctional homes. When parents express both care and cruelty, or constantly change their view of what's acceptable and who can be trusted, children grow up without clear emotional guidance, leaving deep confusion around love, safety, and boundaries. Linda's focus on money added another layer to this dysfunction, showing how finances, control, and emotional leverage were used as tools in the household's power struggles. Her mention of spending millions on Brooke's career seemed intended to prove she had been a supportive parent, but instead revealed how love and support were often conditional and transactional, leaving Brooke caught in a web of guilt, resentment, and emotional confusion. But this kind of thinking, using money as proof of love, can be a powerful form of manipulation, as it suggests that financial support can make up for emotional neglect, verbal harm, or physical abuse, and that Brooke should feel grateful rather than speak out about her pain. This mindset only strengthens Brooke's claims that she felt less like a daughter and more like an investment, a project, or a product built for fame, rather than someone loved unconditionally. Even the divorce settlement between Hulk and Linda revealed how broken their marriage had been long before it unraveled in the public eye. The settlement, involving roughly $30 million in assets, awarded Linda over 70% of their liquid assets, specifically $7.44 million out of $10.41 million, along with 40% ownership in Hulk's business holdings and an additional $3 million in property settlements. This outcome suggests that the court may have viewed Linda's claims of abuse, infidelity, and mistreatment as either credible or serious enough to warrant a significant financial award, adding another painful layer of conflict and resentment to the already damaged Hogan family story. In 2019, a Florida judge ordered Hulk to pay over $180,000 in Linda's legal fees, concluding that he had deliberately created legal obstacles to prevent her from receiving her share of income, including money from the $115 million lawsuit settlement he had won against Gawker. This court ruling pointed to an ongoing pattern of hostility and resentment even years after their divorce, showing that emotional battles, financial control, and unresolved anger continued to define their relationship and affect their children. These actions clearly demonstrated that any chance of healthy co-parenting had long vanished, leaving Brooke and her brother caught in the middle of a prolonged and bitter war that didn't end with the divorce but continued to impact them for years. Perhaps most devastating of all was Hulk Hogan's reaction to Brooke's abuse claims, which came across as mocking, cold, and shockingly dismissive. Rather than responding to his daughter's emotional and deeply personal statements with empathy or even a serious denial, Hulk posted an Instagram video on March 29, 2025, with his wife Sky Daly Hogan, in which the two were seen eating popcorn and shaking their heads, accompanied by a caption joking about rebooting Hogan Knows Best. The tone of the video made it clear that he saw the situation not as a serious family crisis, but as entertainment and possibly even a publicity opportunity. This response was deeply hurtful because it made light of his daughter's trauma and treated her pain as a joke, dismissing the abuse she had spoken about by turning it into content for public amusement. That he would joke about bringing back the very show that had once masked their dysfunctional family behind a cheerful facade only highlighted his complete lack of emotional awareness, compassion, or remorse. Around the same time, Linda posted tearful videos on social media, saying she felt heartbroken, abandoned, and confused about why Brooke had cut her off. But even in these emotional moments, there was no acknowledgement of the harm she may have caused or the impact of her earlier cruel public statements, suggesting that she still did not understand or refused to accept why her daughter had chosen to go no contact. The constant cycle of blame, denial, emotional chaos, and refusal to take responsibility from either parent only confirmed what Brooke had said from the beginning, that the trauma from her childhood had never been addressed, never been healed, and had continued to poison the family dynamic for decades. This long, painful decline reached its final breaking point with the death of Hulk Hogan on July 24, 2025, at the age of 71, from cardiac arrest. The timing made his passing even more tragic, coming just months after Brooke's brave statements and Linda's renewed attacks, because it meant that any hope for healing, understanding, apology, or closure had vanished permanently. And that brings us to the end of this video. For more stories like this, click on the cards on your screen.